It's Kalechi again. And I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to everyone who has been supporting this long. It's been really encouraging. And to anyone who is new here and who is just joining and who just recently subscribed, welcome. I'm looking forward to being of service to you while you are on this platform. Just a few things. I know many of you, or maybe not, I don't know, but I changed a couple of things recently just to be more in line with, the vision that I have for my brand. And just, wanting to create a community all in whatever it is that I'm offering on here that, glorifies God and points to Him. So that's what my goal is for the channel this year. Basically, I don't know, moving it closer to the vision that I feel like God has given me, Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that. So if you see a new name on your timeline being K and it's not recognizable, just know that it's the same channel. It's me. I'm just rebranding and I'm changing some things around. All right. So today I wanted to come and share, as I usually do, from Matthew 16:21 to 23, and it's just basically this concept of being able to discern who we're listening to and being able to discern where we receive counsel from, because not every word, not every advice that comes is necessarily what we need to take into consideration. And so in this particular story, Jesus, I'm just going to read starting from verse 21. And Jesus began to clearly reveal to his disciples that he was destined to go to Jerusalem and suffer injustice from the elders, leading priests, and religious scholars. He also explained that he would be killed and 3 days later be raised to life again. Peter took him aside to correct him privately. He reprimanded Jesus over and over, saying to him, "God forbid, Master, spare yourself. You must never let this happen to you." I'm just going to put a pin in that verse right now. And we look at Peter's words, and you can see his concern for Jesus. You can see his love for Jesus. He clearly loves Jesus. And we know that Peter was arguably one of Jesus's closest disciple, right? And yet we continue in verse 23. Jesus' response to Peter was, "Get out of my way, you Satan. You are an offense to me because your thoughts are only filled with man's viewpoints and not with the ways of God." So why did Jesus respond so harshly to something that could have been seen as, said out of love, said out of concern, right? And it's because Jesus was able to discern where this was coming from. We see that verse in Ephesians that speaks about how we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the principalities of this world. And in this moment, Jesus was able to discern where Peter's words were coming from. Jesus was able to see that although it sounded good, although it seemed to be coming from a good place, right? Peter's words were not motivated by the Holy Spirit. Peter's words were motivated by his flesh. It could be, worry, doubt, fear. Whatever it was that was motivating his words, it was not the Holy Spirit. It was another spirit backed by the enemy. Jesus saw that Peter's words were, although cloaked in concern, was the enemy's tactic to come and derail him, take him away from the will of God for his life. And it came through Peter. And so he was able to speak to the spirit at work because he was definitely not calling Peter Satan. Peter was not Satan. He was speaking to the Spirit at work. So although Peter's words sounded good, Jesus knew that the words were coming to shift him, to take him out of position, to take him away from where it was that his Father had placed him. And that words, the wrong words, can very easily derail us, can very easily take us off course, right? And so why was Jesus able to stand firm on his conviction, stand firm on what he knew that he was supposed to be doing, what he knew that his Father had sent him to do, even though it was going to take him through, suffering, pain, shame, killing, all kinds of things? Why was Jesus able to stand firm in the face of what came as concern, what came as a word from his friend? And it's because Jesus knew his Father. Jesus knew the voice of his Father. Jesus knew the heart of his Father. And so anything that was opposed to that, anything that sounded different from what he knew his Father had said, he was able to drop. Right? And so this is why it's so important for us as people to have that level of intimacy with our Father. This is why it is important for us to be able to recognize his voice to us personally. And this involves intimacy. This involves spending time with God. This involves seeking him continuously. Because the only way to build that type of rapport, the only way to start to recognize God's voice for ourselves, the many unique ways that he speaks to us individually, is to present ourselves and position ourselves to hear him, is to sit in his presence and learn him, learn his heart, learn his ways, learn what pleases him and doesn't please him. And that way we're better able to, recognize his voice. And it's not going to, be perfect all the time. Sometimes we will fail because we're human beings. We are influenced by the Spirit, but we're also influenced by our flesh. And sometimes it muddles up, in there. But the key there is about seeking him constantly, going before him constantly. And the longer we spend time with God, the longer that we come to know who he is and his heart, the better we're able to recognize what is of him and what is not of him, right? And then this way where we are able to take his word, take what he says, because now we can recognize what he's saying. We can then take what he's saying and hold every opinion against what he's saying as a frame of reference, so that we can then know, okay, this is not what I'm supposed to take in. I can leave this here. Because why? It does not fit with what God has said to me. Right? We cannot recognize what is not of God if we don't know what is of God. And not everything that sounds good is God. And I'm going to say that again. Not everything that sounds good is God. And the only way to be able to discern and figure it out is by knowing what God has said about your life. Whatever part of your life, doesn't matter. Knowing what God has said will help you to filter out the noise, will help you to keep out what you don't need to take in. Right? And this then stops us, because it's not just, I'm not speaking to just you listening, I'm speaking to everyone, I'm speaking to myself. This stops us from being led astray. It stops us from being just moved any which way, being blown by the wind, because we're not led by the wrong voices. And the crazy thing is that the wrong voices aren't necessarily always aren't necessarily always the wrong people. I don't think it's a coincidence that it was Peter that spoke up. I don't think it's a coincidence that the enemy came through Peter, because he knew that the easiest way to derail Jesus was to come through a voice that he trusted. And so very easily we will see this happen in our lives, where the people that we trust the most, and they're not I'm telling you, in my experience, it's not usually people who have, bad intentions towards you. In some instances, there are people that you just should not be listening to at all. Completely, at all. Doesn't mean they're bad people that you're just not supposed to be listening to. But then there are people who are actually wise counsel to you. It could be a really good friend, your parents, your pastor. It could be anyone. It could be anyone that you respect and who has, given you sound advice many different times. But again, because we're all human beings, our perspectives are shaped by wherever we are, whatever seasons that we are in that moment. Our perspectives are shaped only by what we know. Only by what we know, right? And so even the people that we trust the most can be influenced by their flesh. They can be influenced by their fears, by their worries, by their doubts, and can very easily speak something that is not in line with what God is saying personally to us. And that is why it's so important that the Holy Spirit is the first point of counsel, because that's the only way to filter. That's the only way to be able to take what people are saying and just filter through. That's the only way to know, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And, be wise about what we're listening to and what we're following and what we're allowing to decide our course of action, so that we're not taken off of a position that God has talked us into because we're listening to things that are talking us out of that position. So this is not to say that don't listen to people or don't take advice from people. No, it's just discernment is about first always leaning on the Holy Spirit. It's about first checking in with him and knowing what God's heart is, because it's the Spirit, it's his Spirit that leads us into all truth. It's his Spirit that reveals his heart. And so it's first checking in with God, checking in with the Holy Spirit. What do you say about this in my life? Where are you leading me about this? What are you saying about this? And making sure that everything else, if we're going to receive anything else, it should be in line with what we know that God has said personally to us. Okay? And so if you enjoyed any of that, please go ahead and subscribe and like, and also comment if you desire. And I hope that this was edifying to you. I hope that this, spoke to you or just gave you just a practical strategy on how to navigate and how to move so that you don't find yourself out of alignment with God's will for your life. All right? I'll see you in the next video.